And so, Maria, thank you very much for being part of that, and also for having accepted to chair this first roundtable on. So the theme is heritage and architecture. We're going to have a certain number of 3 presentations. We've got an hour per roundtable, so we've got to stick in to that time limit. So for all those who have a presentation, please keep to the timer you were given, so we can have allow time for discussion after that. Okay, so Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And indeed, it's a pleasure to moderate and to chair this session. Since myself, I'm an architectural historian, and also I'm a chairperson of the Master Studies in Cultural Heritage at Vilnius University Department of History. And since architectural heritage is one of the oldest in the discipline, of course, it experiences challenges. And I think that the most interesting thing from the point of view of heritage science, at which JPI Cultural Heritage Initiative is focused, is what new shifts, what novel ideas are experienced, are developed in the field of heritage and architecture. And how do we define architectural heritage now as a landscape, cultural landscape, historic urban landscape? If we are thinking about landscape, there is European Landscape Convention, which has taught me about the design and improvement in relation to landscape. Landscape is a perception. It is in our mind, and the reference is the physical context in territory. So if we have a cultural landscape, we need to understand its history, but it becomes more archaeological, so we can still keep our impression about it, and recognition is necessary. But in some way, the presence of this architectural or historical layering in the place becomes one of an important issues. So it is not just a perception, but it also needs qualified research. And we still use different words. For example, in the USA, we talk about historic preservation is an endeavor that seeks to preserve, conserve, and protect buildings, objects, landscapes, or other artifacts in historical significance. In UK, we talk about heritage conservation with a focus on protection and care of tangible cultural heritage, including artwork, architecture, archaeology, museum collections. In Italy, we talk about restauro, but more or less, we all mean the same thing, value as an identity of the result of learning processes, how we appreciate the authentic site, or even what is not authentic, but is completely different process. Now, the question of conservation theory is an interesting thing. Conservation theory should be understood as a critical process. It does not impose solutions, but sustains and guides investigation of situations, case by case, aiming at appropriate solutions. I think it is interesting to think there is a certain relationship between theory and principles. Theory describes issues universally relevant to conservation of heritage. Critical process for recognition as basis for policy, and it consists from creativity and duration. The principle prefer diversity, issues that reflect best practices in relation to specific types of heritage, resources, and relevant contexts. And there we have the basis for guidelines and policy. So while the theory reflects the universal approach to defining recognition and the issues of heritage, it is the principles to be standing by the best practices in different types of heritage and in different social cultural contexts. Therefore, it's a pleasure to present three very inspiring projects today. F-Atlas, Franciscan Landscapes, the observance between Italy, Portugal, and Spain. EHEM, Enhancement of Heritage Experiences, the Middle Age Digital Layered Models of Architecture and Mural Painting over Times. And FEE, The Past Has Ears. I would like to invite Professor Stefano Bertocci from the University of Florence to present the Franciscan landscapes.
Good morning. Sorry, wait a moment, please, for the sharing of the presentation. You can see the presentation. Thank you.
Yes.
So I would like to thank the organization for this interesting workshop. And I am going to present our project. I am a professor of the University of Florence, the Department of Architecture. I am a professor of survey and everything involved with the knowledge of the architecture for the conservation and so on. And this is reflected in this in our project. So the spiritual legacy of St. Francis of Assisi characterized the European culture and survives through his rules, spiritual texts, and mendicant orders. Despite this, many architectural complexes, especially the minor, have lost the original function and values all through our territory in Europe. The importance of mendicant prayers in the transformation of urban and rural landscapes has been recognized only recently. The project aims to study the Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese Franciscan Observance Network, one of the three parts of the Franciscan orders. The more poor, the more respecting the original spirit of Franciscus. In order to define an atlas of documentation and knowledge for conservation, protection, and promotion of this scattered cultural heritage. The remote location of these buildings and their connection with the surrounding landscape and territory instances, the issues of peripheral and abandoned area, and contributes to, to defining a map of criticalness. The proposal aims at combining traditional and innovative techniques in order to develop risk assessment methodologies, protocols, and tools to create a user-friendly interface for management and enhancement of cultural heritage. Furthermore, the project aims at developing new strategy for layered experiences through ICT and innovative methodologies to reuse through the interaction of cultural heritage by designing hiking and cycling routes. The expected outcomes will facilitate awareness of European citizenships based on sharing of common values and will promote an understanding of Europe's history based on its physical, intangible, and natural heritage. You can check our website on the bottom of the presentation. No, ci va? Oh. Sorry, because we have prepared a PDF. So, presentation of the project. Atlas aims to study Italian, Spanish, Portuguese Franciscan Observance Network. in order to define an atlas of documentation and knowledge for conservation, protection, and promotion of this scattered cultural heritage. The remote location of these buildings and their connection with the surrounding landscape instance, the issue of peripheral and abandoned areas, and contributes to defining a map of criticalness. The proposal aims at combining traditional and innovative techniques in order to develop risk assessment methodology, protocols, and tools to create a user-friendly interface for the management and enhancement of cultural heritage, using the technical instruments like GIS and so on. The objective of the project are the definition of criteria for individuation of Franciscan observance landscape, architectures, and cultural heritage in order to develop a critical map. Definition of a census. So this is very important. The census is the fundamental layers for our research. And documentation methodologies on this cultural heritage, showing historical research, architectural investigation, landscape analysis together with digital humanities. Establishment of an interactive database, upgradable and updatable over the time about the observant Franciscan architectures. Development of tools for management and monitoring of material and immaterial, and this is a very important aspect of this project, of the cultural heritage at regional, national, and European level. Development of instruments for the promotion of European heritage in order to pass on tradition and analyze the mutual influences between countries. The research methodologies. As I told before, the preliminary, we have the census of and the choosing of case studies mapping on these three territories, Italy, Spain, and Portugal. After in-depth study of historical documentation, archives, maps, historical records. After, a very important phase of our project is an integrated digital survey of selected case studies, especially the big conventual complex or the abandoned one, and data processing. In this case, we selected a certain number of case studies to survey by 3D laser scanner technology and structured for motion photograph technologies to realize 3D models using or useful also for the building of virtual reality. Another part is architectural, structural, and environmental analysis of selected case studies. I speak before that some of these case studies are really addendum, especially in Portugal. Development of and management of a GIS, a Geographic Information System, to connect the general databases and the information to share the information about this project. Development of user-friendly application for virtual musealization of selected case study, 3D digital prototyping models, and 3D models, as I speak before, for the virtual reality. Proposal of the creation of cultural routes for connecting the case studies. And this is a very important aspect of the project because really we have selected a very interesting case study where the connection between architecture and landscape is very, very important. And then the dissemination and communication of the research results through web tools and scientific papers. The expected impact is a correct and sustainable management of cultural heritage that is based on the coordinated relationships with the historical environment and social context. It can restore and extend the correct interrupted itineraries and create a network that promotes heritage through cultural and sustainable tourism. Intervention for the protection, enhancement and connection of intangible, tangible cultural heritage are planned to consolidate and promote development process to attract touristic flows in peripheral areas, to avoid incongruous intervention on the heritage. This is the specific aim of our survey for the knowledge of the place and for the creation of this 3D model for the conservation also of the actual image of the place. The development of integrated and coherent approach to safeguard tangible, natural, and intangible heritage takes into account the interdependence, considering also the social value for the community. The expected results of the project are related to the exchanges of research experience and best practice. This will allow the knowledge sharing, the connection of people to the cultural heritage, and the safeguarding opportunity for the Franciscan Observers Heritage and Network. Thank you very much. In the bottom of our presentation, you can find also our social networks for the dissemination of the results of the project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Stefano Bertocci. And I think it's very interesting to see that critical map, since we are talking a lot about critical processes in architectural heritage. I will come back later with some questions to you and to your project. But now I would like to introduce another project, AHEM, Enhancement of Heritage Experiences, the Middle Age Digital Layered Models of Architecture and Mural Painting over Times. And the project leader is Milagros Gardia from the University of Barcelona. So I very much invite you to present your project and colleagues. Please, Milagros.
Well, thank you very much for your invitation. Sorry. I share my screen. It's okay. Our project aims to achieve virtual reconstructions of medieval artistic heritage, especially architecture with mural paintings, that intend to be as close as possible to the original at different times. To do so, all the historical artistic knowledge available will provide a diachronic perspective. Another goal is to show not only how these painted buildings looked like in the past, but also their function and how they were used and perceived by the different users. AHEM will offer a digital tool for researchers, restorers, and curators. The project also aspires to humanize the heritage, offering to the 21st century spectator an experience close to the medieval audience. In the Middle Ages, mural painting was the architectural scheme, but it frequently reached the 19th century whitewashed or hidden under layers of lime. Since then, the paintings that remain inside were gradually catalogued, as well as those that were subsequently discovered under modern plastering. At first, these actions provoked the rapid degradation of the pictorial remains. Unfortunately, its discovery also aroused the interest of merchants and collectors who, with different extraction procedures, purchased fragments of these decorations that ultimately caused their dispersion. Thus, several churches were dispossessed of their skin, and the paintings were moved to new supports for their exhibition. During the Middle Ages, both architecture and mural paintings changed over time, and because of that, every new appearance should be independently understood. In some instances, it is possible to identify the successive post-medieval stages of transformation along with the medieval ones. In others, the result was the overlapping of the previous paintings because of the renewal of different parts of the building. Always, whether in situ or removed, the frescoes were restored with the prevailing criteria of each epoch. When it comes to understanding, divulging, and revealing a building with mural paintings, usually it is shown in its very best moment. The simplification deeply alters the intricate dynamics of changes and adaptations that constitutes the rich biography of the building and its decoration. Thus, the exhaustive documentation of these changes emerged as a crucial issue to achieve the most precise and rigorous knowledge of the building's medieval facies. The project will design three-dimensional digital models that include all these layers of information. A database in development will allow the collection of all kinds of documentation: archaeological, architectural, art historical, restoration, textual and graphic data, and analysis. To fulfill this purpose, we have chosen three monuments that summarize all the casuistry and may serve as a testing ground. Firstly, the early medieval church of Santa Maria Antiqua in Rome preserves an extraordinary case of pictorial palimpsest, consisting of up to 10 layers of overlapping painted plasters realized during a relatively short period of life, which also poses architectural challenges of visual resolution. Secondly, the Hermitage of San Quirze de Pedret in Catalonia, Spain, with its complex architectural genesis from the 10th century, and that was decorated at the head of the church at two different times by superimposing a layer on the previous one. The discovery of its paintings, their removal, and the transfer to different museums took place at two different times, 1921, 1937, and with very different procedures, namely museographic montages and restoration interventions. Thirdly, the Engleistra, or place of seclusion founded by Neophytos, Agios Neophytos Monastery, Paphos, Cyprus, originates in an hermitage nucleus later transformed into a monastery. The oratory was excavated in the rock from a natural cave and was decorated at different times during the Middle Ages with Byzantine wall paintings. The extreme nature of the site and the irregular nature of the rocky surface that houses these cycles, comprising of up to 5 phases, constitute a fundamental challenge for their digital presentation. The specific objectives of our project are: one, understanding architectural complexity, which is usually regularized geometrically. The collaboration of architects expressed in this time of investigation has an enormous interest to reach a real understanding of the construction of the building and its structural anomalies. Two, solve chromatic problems. Distinct restoration criteria followed over the years have resulted in notable differences in the current chromatic perception, sometimes of fragments of the same ensemble. The analysis of pigments, the arrangement of the pictorial layers, and their successive restorations will allow us to digitally identify the original colors of these paintings. Three, raise and recommend the resolution of lighting problems. Today, trials have been carried out based on the analysis of natural lighting. We will deal with artificial lighting by means of light sources such as chandeliers or oil lamps, which produce effects of painting vibration when the images acted during the medieval liturgical ceremonies. And four, a digital approach to the different perspectives of a medieval building to reconstruct with the new technologies the different visual perceptions of the decorated parts of the church by the intended audience, both laity and clergy. In order to attain reliable models, the hand monitoring of the technical research activity will be very strict, thanks to the assessment of art history experts. The conceptual research structure of the HAM includes 4 blocks that neither fit exactly with the work packages nor the boxes are tasks. Block 1 incorporates the actions needed to acquire the data and associated information of the churches. Block 2 embraces the different research activities that deal with generating the faithful and complete models. Block 3 is about storing and enriching the models in a common open access platform. Block 4 is dedicated to make models available to 3 targeted communities. We have organized the project in 5 scientific technological work packages and several functional ones, as you can see on the screen. Work package 3 encompasses various tasks, from the acquisition of images to the settling of the paintings onto the digital model of the building. These tasks include challenging processes as revealing the material characteristics of the frescoes and assembling in the digital model the pieces of the paintings sparse in different locations. Work package 4 includes the digitization of the buildings and the processing of its geometry to obtain a suitable mesh for the project. This task will require a relevant interaction with work package 3. Work package 5 oversees providing the simulation of the lighting suited to each period and to supply it to the visualization phase. It includes natural lighting through openings and artificial light is produced by different light sources that I had said previously. Work package 6 concentrates on storing in an adequate platform that enables to analyze, document, share, and enrich the models produced by work package 3 and work package 4. We foresee to use IOLI, an open source software that permits to add semantics for collaborative documentation of pieces of cultural heritage. Work package 7 is intended to present the results to the different targeted users, designing and implementing the suited graphic user interface to each community, guided by the evolutionary approach of the project. The HAM approach, the whole life cycle of the building should be digitally reproduced, especially its mural paintings, because of their well-known fragility. Our project is a contribution, we even dare to call it essential, to ensure the preservation and to map the exhaustive knowledge of the complex biography of a medieval painted building. Thus, our results should become an essential tool for future interventions and research. The project will use the software, IOLI, as I have said, because it enables a whole story, documentation, sharing, and semantic enrichment of cultural heritage. It also will be implemented with the results of the HAM to the targeted users. Moreover, we expect that these new software technologies will suit the needs of many professionals, restorers, curators, cultural heritage agents, and art history researchers, usually restricted to simple tools like database and management systems. These models represent only an initial outline of the potential users. They will allow the content framework to develop future mobile apps and video mapping for the dissemination of the cultural heritage to engage and enlarge the target audience. For example, the heritage public administrations can integrate the model to haptic devices to facilitate the access to the monument to people with disabilities. Moreover, the model can be used to create game and entertainment applications for a younger audience. Another use is related to the virtual and augmented reality, both in situ and ex situ, to enhance the experience of the visitors. The open source platform can be exploited by small and medium-sized enterprises to create mobile apps and further development of the cultural section. Our project began a year ago, but has experienced some delays due in part to the global pandemic situation. We cannot, in the time allotted to us, present or show the results obtained so far. So we will simply summarize it visually with a few photographs. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Milagros Garvia, for interesting project and this presentation. Immediately it comes to my mind a very interesting parallel, a discovery in Lithuania when art historian Giedrė Mickūnaitė she was researching a late medieval church near Vilnius, and the discovery of remains of the wall paintings presented a sensational result, as the initial version of the church was located differently, and it was later turned and expanded. But the findings and discovery of the first phase of murals helped researchers to produce this sensational finding. So I very much appreciate, and we will come later in the discussion about the experience of heritage. But now I want to invite the third project of today's topic, heritage and architecture, the PHI, or Phoenix, as it is also associated with Phoenix, the Past Has Ears project, and its leader, Brian F.G. Katz, research director at CNRS and Sorbonne University. Please present your project.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess I'll wait for Sylvie to fix the presentation mode. So this is the PHI project. And the key focus of this project is looking at archaeoacoustics, digital heritage reconstructions, again, focusing on acoustics, and virtual reality and augmented reality, all kind of turning around acoustic heritage. If we can go to the next slide, please. Whoops, too far. So the basic context of the project is looking at how cultural heritage, for the most part, has so far been concentrating around the physical, the tangible, and visual nature, and we can see that in kind of the previous presentations. And with advancements by UNESCO recently, a few years ago, focusing on the importance of sound in today's world, under the context of intangible cultural heritage, we kind of formed a project in that guise, and it's been kind of a subject of discussion in a number of different projects. And the PHI project concerns really focusing on methodology of this kind of acoustic heritage linked to acoustic sites with important acoustics and the associated landscapes or soundscapes. The project is geared between three principal universities. Each one has a number of departments involved internally. Plus, we've identified three national sites who have agreed to be partners in this project. And those are the Cathedral of Notre Dame, the British Parliament, and the Sicilian region around an ancient amphitheater. So we go to the next slide. So we were all kind of aware globally about the destruction of historic sites. The most recent has been the Cathedral of Notre Dame in 2019. But not even that long ago, there was also the theater in La Fenice, which also burned down. And these two were kind of the inspiration of this project PHI, named after the phoenix. And as well, Fenice also means phoenix, so that was kind of a double plus for that. The stained glass window image that you can see there is the PHI image, is the phoenix image from one of the rosaces in Notre Dame. And the goal is really to look at the preservation, conservation, and reconstruction of these heritage sites, but focusing on the acoustic side and making something that is viable for both researchers, stakeholders in terms of the sites, cultural institutions, and accessible to the general public. And the main overriding goal is really to bring sound to the forefront and looking at how we can analyze these different sites, how we can recreate the acoustics and experiencing these different sites, and then communicate these experiences both to the general public and to researchers in other disciplines, such as musicologists, historians, and architects. So if we go to the next slide. Whoops. So we've kind of broken the project down into three principal work packages, looking at how we can measure and study these elements. And those are documentation. So we're looking at acoustical documentation, archaeological, architectural, and cultural documentation of these sites. we're looking at how to render and better understand these sites as they evolve through history. So from evidence to oralization, we're looking at a layered history model, because almost all of these sites have gone over across numerous changes throughout history. All of these buildings are kind of living, and none of them are in their original state at the moment as they were. And then we're looking at presentation. So this could be presentation, both general public presentations, so making use of kind of commercial virtual reality systems, online services, YouTube or other things, but also how to do museum installations and looking how to present things to the general public in groups, and also how to do higher quality renderings for researchers and the scientific community. And the goal is to really present different, more I can't think of the word in English. Different methods to do these things using our 3 case studies that we've identified across the 3 countries. And those case studies are kind of overlying all of the work that we're doing among the different teams. So if we go to the next slide. So the impact is really to benefit these 3 sites, but as well to take everything that we've learned through these sites and make it much more general. So I get back to the methodological frameworks and guidelines that we want to develop. These include procedures for doing measurements, but also legal frameworks on how intellectual property from the sites can actually be better handled in terms of cultural heritage, which is something that the sites are actually requesting, and we're experiencing already every time we do a measurement, acoustic measurement in one of these sites. There's questions of who owns the rights to those measurements and the simulations that are resulting from those measurements. We're also looking at unifying a set of tools, open access framework concepts, and also storage aspects. And that's kind of the general overlying idea of the impact of these different projects. Actually, boy, I am going through this much faster than some of the other people, apparently. I guess if we go to the last slide, and then I can't, that'll be just kind of the thank you. So here I kind of took all of the different teams that are involved within the different universities and partners. We have a number of small business partners, architectural consulting firms that are also taking part in the project. We're also looking at doing a journal access production. So we have a small team doing a radio fiction based on the results from some of the research as a way to kind of communicate the acoustic history of places. And then finally, I just also want to note that the French team received additional support through a national project, which is the FEN project, which is the Past Azirs at Notre Dame, which is kind of complementing the work that we're doing in general on the methodology in the FEI project, and using the results of the FEI project in a more application-oriented context in the FEN project. We started roughly a year ago. There's been quite a lot of delays, and I don't know if we talk about that later in the day about administrative issues and things like that. But for example, our Italian partners only maybe about a few weeks ago or maybe a month ago finally got access to their finance to start spending and hiring. So that's made about an 8-month, 10-month delay for one partner of the project. The English team also had some other delays. So I think that could be something, if it's possible, to talk about later on how to resynchronize projects and improve kind of how the funding process administratively works. But I think that concludes my presentation. We have a website at the bottom, as you can see. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. And I think, yeah, these large-scale projects require a large administration. But first, I would like to go back to the nature of all of the 3 projects and what's novel, what's innovative when you think about architectural heritage in the contemporary society. And when I got acquainted with all these 3 projects, I would like to emphasize or to somehow extract one word or one phrase, it's experience of architecture. In a way, the shift is very strongly felt in the direction of experience architecture, not only restoring, documenting, but creating ways, either virtual or live, to experience. And of course, in creating live ways, you will need a lot of restrictions of contemporary construction administration. For example, I would like to ask Milagros, how is it possible to restore lamp lighting in a church and safety, fire protection safety? So, in Brian's case, it is also very interesting to hear. Is it possible to restore those soundscapes or sounds and avoid contemporary sound pollution, we can even say, or in Stefano's case, how can you eliminate landscapes of contemporary constructions or structures? So my first question to all of you project leaders is the reflection of the importance of experiencing architecture and restoration, or how can you recreate those experiences in all these projects. So I will first go for Stefano. Can you share your experience about experiencing architecture and the importance of it?
Yes, especially in this project, we have had a very, very nice, very important experience, especially surveying the rural context in Portugal, because we are three nations and we have three different kinds of laws and history. For example, in Portugal, they have a certain part of this heritage is abandoned, really abandoned, and we can find now only ruins in some part of these monasteries. In Italy, we can find these monasteries that are already using, also in France, but sometimes they are changed in, especially the little one, especially in home, in B&B, home for vacation, and so on. It's not a bad thing, but it's important to give them the guidelines for the conservation, because there are some certain that we define invariants that we have to maintain to preserve the original area, the original perception of this building itself. And what we can use also, as it happened in the beautiful project of the frescoes, or about the acoustic heritage that we have seen now, the virtual reality is really useful. It's useful for it's not only a joke. It's useful for the dissemination. It's useful for the tourists, because the people can have the impression of the place, and the virtual reality is a good opportunity to reconstruct the historical phases of the building itself. So you can have an overlook about the importance of the building itself, that now maybe it's a ruins, or now maybe it's a B&B, but in the past it was an important step of this net of connection. That is, and we have discovered this very big net of connection of the Franciscan roots in Europe. Several examples that we are now scheduling, and it will be very important also these nets, because the connection with the landscape is very important. Each one of these monasteries on the top of a mountain, in a valley, very close to some little rivers and so on. And it was originally in the mind of the rules of Francisco to conserve these important rules of the building itself with the landscape. And the phrase has to be in the building itself, in the church, but also the wood, also the landscape, also the rocks that they are immersed in the landscape are holy spaces, and it's very important to transfer this impression to the actual European people, because it's very important to preserve these aspects of our culture.
Thank you very much, Milagros.
I would like to give one of my contacts to Professor Brian Katz, because we have already we are partners in another project of auralization that is called Aura. I will give you the website now. That is related to the auralization of theaters in Europe, the Opera Theater of Florence, the Concert House in Berlin, and the Lviv Theater of the Opera. So we can have some connection. This is important also of this opportunity that we have in this workshop, to connect our experiences, to exchange our experience. Thank you, Sophie.
Great networking. that's the main result. Okay, so now I would like to invite Milagros to comment on yeah.
Yes, I think it's very interesting, this workshop, because it permits us to know what are they working about, but above all to establish connections between us, because we have spoken about the tangible cultural heritage, paintings, architecture, but also about intangible elements as lighting, as you asked me. And it's really a question of senses and perception. We do not intend naturally to put candles, install candles or oil lamps inside the churches, neither inside the museums. We will try to reproduce these effects virtually. And the way to do it is not easy, but we know where were installed some lighting artifacts, but others, the position of other candles may be known by examining the surface of the paintings, because they have affected parts of, it's a work we're doing, and combining with the problems of natural lighting also, because some of our paintings have been removed. Then they are artificially illuminated by LED lamps, and that is not the same as when we go to Agios Neophytos, is a cave with paintings. All these particularities may be studied, and it's a work that we have prepared to do next year. It's the next phase of working. Thank you.
Thank you. And Brian, you have already talked about the importance of this experiencing different aspects of architecture. So please follow up.
Okay. I mean, we kind of tried to, I mean, we had the three sites that we focused on have very different access. So we've kind of focusing on recreation for visitors on places where you can actually get on site. So like the ancient Roman theater, sites where we can be near, like Notre Dame, we can't get in because it's under work for the next 5 or 50 years, but we can actually walk alongside it. So we can have a sense of space and context. And then all the way to the English site where it's a working house of government, but we can be near it. So we're going from kind of augmented reality that could be purely auditory, to audiovisual augmented reality, to full virtual reality, either immersed in headsets on an individual sense, which could also be used in some of these kind of immersive film centers now that are available. And we're talking to some of those places to see if we can get a 360 interactive film that way, or to larger scale multi-person virtual reality caves. So we're kind of spanning all of those different aspects. And again, it depends on the audience and the information that we're trying to convey. Is it for the general public, or is it for kind of research studies? So if we want to look at singers and how singing is affected by room acoustics, and how kind of the Cathedral of Notre Dame has changed over 800 years, and how does that impact the ability of singers to sing, we're also using virtual reality reconstructions for that at a much higher precision than what we would be using for the general public. And we're kind of looking at different technologies. There is now a new emergence of 3D audio in museums now. And we're trying to partner with some people who are doing that and looking at the technology that they're using to kind of anticipate in 2 or 3 years what we could actually do for an installation with our partner sites. I don't know if that answered the question exactly.
Yeah, well, we all understand this shift, or all academic research about history of architecture or architectural heritage is focused on more experiences than just seeing or from a distance or enjoying.
Yeah.
And yeah, but I think you raise a very important question: who's the audience, who receives and who perceives those results, and how you present? Do you want just to make an academic paper of reconstructed soundscapes, or you want to create some tools that people change their perception of original idea, why this building or this site was constructed and how it functioned in its original purpose?
Yeah. So we're very much focusing on that with kind of the interdisciplinary team, going from computer scientists to historians, sociologists, musicologists. Everybody has a bit of a different perspective, and we're kind of all thinking, how do we communicate this to each other? And then the second is, how do we communicate it to people in the outside world?
That's the complicated nature of these large scale projects, that you must envisage all these audiences and groups. And talking about networking, I want to remind you that in the Zoom we have this chat section, and already I saw several proposals were presented and some projects that share similar topics. Being from the East Central Europe region, I also want to pay your attention that talking about Europe, for example, Franciscan roots and soundscapes and mural paintings in late medieval, you can also find counterparts in this region. And that was my, probably not a question, but a comment. How do you include in your workshops or your broader approach this similar object in northern countries and other European countries? But I also am obliged to give the floor to all participants of this meeting. And do we have questions from the audience, from our other participants? I think there was the option to raise a hand, but since I do not see this option now, maybe somebody has just put your microphone on and ask a question, please. Okay, I can't hear anything, so I think we can still have a short round with our project leaders.
I would like to ask Panayotis, one of my colleagues of Cyprus, if he can explain something about the experiences they have made in Agios Neophytos about the landscape. You talked previously about landscape and the importance of that, and he has made some interesting works about that. Panagiotis, are you here?
Yeah,
Yeah.
hi, Milagros.
Hello. Hello.
Apologies, I'm in a hotel for a workshop, so I hope the sound is good. So yeah, so the Englistra of Agios Neophytos in Paphos in Cyprus, it's a very interesting monument where Saint Neophytos built his sanctuary into the rocks. So if you go now there, there are some places where you cannot visit them by foot. So that means that you have to use drones or whatever to take photographs for photogrammetry reasons for the monument. So we had some nice, some nice interactions also there with the priests, because there are some priests still there, that they said that they are building a museum for the monument, and they would be really interested in having virtual reality experiences for people that cannot obviously go there and see some of the places, to be able to have experiences in the museum to experience the monument as it is currently, and also as it was obviously during the Middle Ages up to now. Yeah, so yeah, the main problem there is mostly about capturing some of the difficult to go places. I don't know, Milagros, if I answered your question.
I spoke about landscape and what you
Yeah.
have done.
Yeah, so actually what we were really interested there is not just capturing the monument itself, but also the landscape, because it shows why that saint selected the place to go and build his sanctuary, because it was a very nice place with wildlife and forests, etc. So we wanted to capture that also. And in addition to that, we are also interested in giving life to that. So we will be adding animals, we will be adding humans, and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, and we plan. This is not a promise, but we plan to also recreate the saint himself being represented in the place with using cutting-edge digital human technology. We have some nice videos of the project. You might, I don't know if Milagros, we put them on the website, but we have some really nice videos of the monument, and if you want, I can share them in the chat, so you can understand and appreciate the place itself. So yeah,
thank you.
That's it from me.
Thank you, Panagiotis.
Thank you. And I also see in the chat a lot of information about archaeoacoustics as a very hot topic, and people are sharing these connections. Okay, that's very interesting, and I think we managed to show some new directions in the architectural heritage and what's on in heritage science, where the object of research is still the very old, good old architectural heritage. Charles, do we have more questions? If not, I think
so.
Yeah, we can say that this session is more or less heading to an end. At least I would like to ask all project leaders to share some final words with us. Stefano, would you like to say something?
I think that this meeting has given us a good overview about the new direction on our cultural and the opportunity for the conservation of cultural heritage. We have the lost territories. That is the project that I have done. So the marginality, the landscape, the rural areas that are now on crisis, and that it's very difficult to preserve now, because we have our interests are only focused on over the town landscape, the monument, and we have instead a net of monuments sprawled around in the territory that is necessary now to conserve and to preserve. And the other idea is very important is that we have now the opportunity to have the digital tools to experiment new horizons for the conservation. Since now you can have only the experience, only the real experience can give you the all the perceptive sensation. It means smell, it means view, it means a lot of things. Now we can add, with the auralization technique, we can add also the aura that is very important for the perception of the people. And especially in the Milagros project, we have also the lighting. That is another aspect, so that the lighting can change and can be very useful for the interpretation. Now we have a certain kind of lighting, and in the original vision of the masterpieces, we have another very different with the candles and so on. So we can enlarge this way of thinking, and I would like to underline this aspect. We are transferring from the materials. We are architects, so experts in materials, but we are transforming our interest by the material to the immaterial contents of the cultural heritage. That is very, very important for the future already. Thank you.
I think Stefano, sorry, Maria. I think Stefano had summarized perfectly all the meeting. I would like to have another meeting exposing the results or the problems we have. It would be also interesting.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Next time.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Maria.
Brian.
If I have just one thing to point out, I think what's challenging at the moment with the growth of the technology in virtual reality is to make sure that what we do as scientists is science and not art. And there's the risk of any kind of virtual reconstruction to take more liberty in what you create, whether it's audio or visual. And I think we need to be careful on always kind of justifying the choices that we make, so that it's presented to people, they understand, maybe why the quality isn't as good as a video game or the latest CGI graphics, but that it's actually founded on some kind of historical reality and scientific reality. And because we can't compete with those big production houses, so they'll always look less quality, but we have to highlight what is the benefit of it. And I think that's something that when we start getting into general public presentations, we need to kind of pay attention to.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you, Stefano, Milagros, and Brian, for presentation of the projects. Very good luck, all the best with your projects, and we will be really interested to see the results. Maybe some more workshops where you share your ongoing research, and big thanks to the audience. I think it was interesting to see those new direction in architectural heritage science. And I give the word back to Charles